Representative Steve King is being removed from committee assignments following some of his racist remarks. Now, this comes from House Leader Kevin McCarthy, and it reported in CNN that he announced that the House Republican Steering Committee, which oversees committee assignments, met Monday night and made a decision that Steve King will not be serving on any committees in this Congress. So Republicans have finally decided we would condemn Steve King for his consistent racism. Now, they did that after the statements came out in a New York Times interview where he asked why being a white supremacist was so offensive. Yeah, that's, if you have to ask that, then odds are you are a white supremacist. Just saying. Now, King, of course, not happy about this. He hit back by saying, quote, "Leader McCarthy's decision to remove me from committees is a political decision that ignores the truth." Well, what truth? What truth would that possibly be? That he is racist? And that he's been a deep racist for a very, very long time? Well, let's go to him. He said, "One of my quotes in a New York Times story has been completely mischaracterized." Oh, they took me out of context. They misquoted me. He said, "I will continue to point out the truth and work with all the vigor that I have to represent the 4th District Iowans for at least the next 2 years." Now look, 4th District Iowans are not racist. There is a great majority of them who don't want the representation of Steve King. So, and they'll have a chance to remove him come 2020. But as far as the statements, right? Well, let me tell you his statements. He said, "White nationalist, white supremacist, Western civilization. How did that language become offensive?" Now, how can you mischaracterize that? That seems pretty clear. I'm just saying. Now, again, removing him from his committees is a big deal. He was in some very important committees. In fact, he was on the House Judiciary, Agriculture, and Small Business committees, and was the top Republican on the Judiciary Subcommittee. So again, important committee assignments, right? So that's, look, it is to me refreshing to see Republicans actually go after somebody who in their party for being racist. That's something that we don't see. But then again, here's where I get some criticism, right? Steve King's been a racist for years, and it hasn't actually been a secret. In fact, it's been in our faces the whole time. How could you have not seen it? The thing is, he has said a lot of terrible racist things for a very, very long time. In fact, he said recently, or I think it was a couple of years ago, when supporting Geert Wilders, right? Also a white supremacist. He said, "We can't restore our civilization with somebody else's babies." That's just one example. I've got plenty more. In fact, Steve King has a very, very long history of racism. Back in 2002, for example, while he was in the Iowa State Senate, he filed a bill requiring schools to teach the United States is, quote, "the unchallenged greatest nation in the world, and that has derived its strength from Christianity, free enterprise, capitalism, and Western civilization." So that is incredibly ignorant to history, right? And one of those things where it's jingoism to the extreme. The United States, I love this country, right? So I love being in America. I love being an American, right? Being an American doesn't mean blindly ignoring the faults of this country and blindly ignoring how we have done some pretty terrible things. So, but people like Steve King, well, they're supremacists, and they want to make sure that we forget about all of those things as if they never happened. And I think that's the absolute wrong way to go. Now, not only that, but King was also the chief sponsor of a law that would make English the official language of Iowa. Why would you want to do that? I don't understand. But okay. Not only that, but in 2005, he introduced that same legislation which was a bill to make English the official language of the United States. So it wasn't just Iowa. Iowa wasn't enough. No, we speak English here in America. Again, this sort of English anti-immigrant supremacy, right? Yeah, it helps to speak English, right? But it shouldn't be a requirement. I just don't quite understand. But anyway, now, Mr. King also sued the Iowa Secretary of State for posting voting information on an official website in Spanish, Laotian, Bosnian, and Vietnamese. How dare these people who speak a different language be able to understand how to vote in America? Do you understand what that means? Well, if you can't speak English, I don't want you voting because you're not going to vote for people like me. That's not all. In 2006, at a rally in Las Vegas, King called the deaths of Americans at the hands of undocumented immigrants a, quote, slow-motion Holocaust, which I'm sure upsets a lot of Jewish people. It should. He also claimed that 25 Americans die daily because of undocumented immigrants. That is not true at all. That's, at best, an unsupported and illogical leap from government statistics, which, of course, ended up getting used as a talking point for President Trump. In fact, Steve King is the original build the wall guy. Yes. Back in 2006 on the House floor, King demonstrated a model of a 12-foot concrete border wall, topped with electrical wire that he himself had designed. So you want to get on Trump for saying, build a wall, build a wall. Steve King was the original build the wall guy. And he wanted to put electrical fence. He also, of course, he said, actually, on the House floor, we need to do a few other things on top of that wall. And one of them being to put a little bit of wire on top here to provide a disincentive for people to climb over the top or put a ladder there. We also could electrify this wire. We do that with livestock all the time. So, yeah, original build-a-wall guy, but with electric fence. Not only that, but in 2010, on the House floor, speaking of how law enforcement can spot undocumented immigrants, he said, quote, what kind of clothes people wear, what kind of shoes they wear, what kind of accent they have. Sometimes it's just a sixth sense where they could put their finger on it. Now, I have an idea. On and on, man. That's just a small snippet of Steve King's racism over the years. So why did the Republicans ignore the dog whistle for so many years? Why move on it now? I mean, why now? Why now? I mean, maybe it's because we have a more diverse Congress. Okay. At least on the Democratic side. I don't see it being all that diverse on the Republican side. No, here's what it is. It turns out racism and the Republicans' Southern strategy is not working anymore. It's not going to work anymore. That's why suddenly you have Republicans saying, oh my God, I didn't know Steve King was a racist. We need to stop that guy. We need to make sure that he gets out of the party. In fact, here you had Mitch McConnell coming out after this and saying, quote, there is no place in the Republican Party, the Congress, or the country for an ideology of racial supremacy of any kind. Well, that's because racial supremacy of any kind is dumb. I mean, white supremacists, black supremacists, Asian supremacists, you're all dumb. If you think one race is superior to the other, then you are dumb. You're not a smart person. Doesn't matter what race it is. You're dumb. So now that we're clear on that, and now that Mitch McConnell is clear on that, I actually 100% agree with him. He also said, quote, I have no tolerance for such positions, and those who espouse these views are not supporters of American ideals and freedoms. Representative King's statements are unwelcome and unworthy of his elected position. He also added, if he doesn't understand why white supremacy is offensive, he should find another line of work. Damn, dude, Mitch McConnell. I know, shocking, right? That Mitch McConnell would come out, but that just shows where the political headwinds are going. That he would actually poke his head out of his shell for once and say such a strong statement, it shows you that the environment it is no longer conducive to having people like Steve King around inside the party. Now, Mitt Romney. Now, Mitt Romney, we all know he's a human weather vane, but I want to give you a statement anyway. He said, I think he ought to step aside, and I think Congress ought to make it very clear he has no place here. Okay. Again, that's about as strong as Mitt Romney is allowed to get, or allows himself to get. Now, Representative Chris Stewart said that he absolutely agreed with McCarthy's decision and wishes King would resign. He said, and I love this statement here, he said on Cuomo Prime Time on CNN, quote, it's not the first time that he said things the party just cringes at and says, what in the world are you saying? I wish he'd resign, frankly. He can't do the work. He's lost the trust and faith of his comrades. For the good of the party, for the good of the American people, I think it's time for us to make a change. Could not agree more. And there are votes now, or there is there may be some votes here in the future to censure him until he gets out of office. So, look, that's going to be interesting to see whether they follow through on that. If so, they would actually be putting some action behind their words. And that is very rare for Republicans. Now, one more here. This is from King himself responding. He said, quote, I regret the heartburn that is poured forth upon this Congress and this country, and especially in my state and my congressional district. But the people who do know me know I would never have to make this statement because they know my life and they know my history. They know that I have lived in the same place since 1978. And that's going back to Republican hypocrisy. He has lived in the same racist place since the 70s. We know about that. We knew about that, and so did the rest of the Republicans. Why did it take so long for you guys to finally come out against this? Now, before, again, they knew. Chris Stewart says, yeah, we've been hearing him spout this stuff for years, and we just kind of cringe at him. Like, oh, but he votes with us, and he votes on our legislation to cut taxes for the rich. He's on our side for all these things. We also believe in horrific immigration practices, so we're just going to let it go. But at this point, the dog whistle is so loud that we can't ignore it, and that he's gotten so much heat in the media finally that we are finally having to turn against him. So I will believe it when I see it if the Republicans are actually serious about censuring him, serious about getting the racism out of that party. So we'll see. But look, from what it appears, according to the vote, according to some of these statements, that in 2019, that kind of racism is now starting to be a little bit more unpalatable to Republicans. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.